In the quiet hours of the night, when the world outside grows still and even the most restless thoughts begin to slow, it is easy to imagine a distant place where time itself seems to move more gently. In this place, the stone walls of medieval castles rise not with drama or urgency, but with patient purpose, shaped by hands that worked slowly, steadily, and without haste. These castles were not built to impress, though they often did, nor were they designed for beauty alone. They were built to endure. Their genius lay not in ornament, but in careful design, repeated patterns, and a deep understanding of land, stone, and human nature. A medieval castle did not begin with walls or towers. It began with the land itself. Builders would walk the hills quietly, observing slopes, streams, and ridges. High ground was favored, not for glory, but for visibility and drainage. A hill allowed rainwater to move away from the walls instead of pooling at their base. It allowed defenders to see approaching travelers long before they arrived. Even the shape of the hill mattered. A steep slope slowed attackers, tiring them before they ever reached the gate. A gentle slope allowed carts and supplies to be brought in more easily during peaceful times. Balance was always the goal. Once the land was chosen, the castle grew outward in layers, like a thought unfolding slowly. The outermost boundary was often a ditch or moat. Sometimes it held water, sometimes only dry earth, but its purpose was the same. It created distance. Distance was safety. An enemy had to cross that open space, exposed and visible, before ever touching the walls. The moat did not need to be dramatic. It only needed to exist, quietly doing its work, day after day. Beyond the moat stood the outer wall, thick and plain. These walls were not smooth. Their rough stone surfaces made climbing difficult. The stones were stacked with care, each one chosen for size and shape, fitted together like pieces of a puzzle that had no picture on the box. Mortar filled the gaps, binding everything together into a single mass that could absorb blows from early siege weapons. The walls were wide enough for people to walk along the top, and sometimes wide enough to hold small rooms inside their thickness. Along these walls stood towers, spaced carefully so that defenders could see every angle of the surrounding land. The towers were not always round at first. Early castles used square towers, simple and easy to build. Over time, builders learned that round towers deflected blows better and eliminated weak corners. This knowledge spread slowly, castle by castle, stone by stone. There was no rush. Improvement came through observation, repetition, and patience. The entrance to the castle was the most carefully designed part of all. The gatehouse was not simply a door. It was a narrow passage filled with obstacles. Heavy wooden doors reinforced with iron stood at either end. Between them hung a portcullis, a metal grid that could be dropped quickly if danger appeared. The ceiling above often held holes through which defenders could drop stones, boiling water, or sand. The passage was intentionally cramped, forcing visitors to slow down, to move in single file, to feel the weight of the walls pressing in around them. Inside the outer walls lay the inner bailey, a wide open space where daily life unfolded. This was where people lived, worked, and waited. Blacksmiths worked quietly at their forges. Animals moved slowly between stables. Wells provided water, dug deep into the earth so that the castle could survive even during long sieges. Every feature served a purpose, and none were wasted. Space was precious. Everything had to justify its presence. At the center of the castle stood the keep, the final refuge. The keep was tall, solid, and unadorned. Its walls were the thickest of all. Inside, rooms were stacked one above the other, connected by narrow staircases that curved clockwise. This was not an accident. A right-handed defender descending the stairs had more freedom to swing a sword, while an attacker climbing up found their movement restricted. Even the direction of a staircase was a quiet act of defense. Windows in the keep were small and narrow, widening on the inside to let in light while minimizing vulnerability. These openings were not meant to offer views. They were meant to allow daylight to enter just enough to see, without allowing arrows to pass easily through. The rooms were dim, cool in summer and cold in winter, but the thick stone walls regulated temperature better than one might expect. They held warmth during the night and resisted heat during the day. Fireplaces were built directly into the walls, their chimneys carefully angled to draw smoke upward. Smoke drifting back into a room was not dramatic, but it was uncomfortable, and medieval builders understood how small discomforts could become serious problems over time. Ventilation was subtle but essential. Air moved slowly through corridors, stairwells, and hidden shafts, keeping the castle from becoming stale. Castles were designed not only to withstand attack, but to support long periods of waiting. Waiting was the true challenge of medieval life. During a siege, days stretched into weeks, and weeks into months. Food had to be stored carefully. Grain was kept dry in raised rooms. Salted meat hung quietly in cool spaces. Bread was baked in advance and hardened for preservation. Nothing was wasted. Everything was planned with calm foresight. Rainwater was collected from rooftops and channeled into cisterns. Waste was directed away through carefully placed latrines built into the walls, allowing gravity to do its work. Even these unglamorous features were part of the castle's intelligence. A castle that could not manage waste would fail without ever being attacked. The genius of medieval castles was not found in a single invention, but in the way many small ideas worked together. Each feature reinforced the others. Walls supported towers. Towers protected gates. Gates controlled movement. Movement shaped behavior. Behavior determined survival. Everything was connected, like a quiet system operating in the background, unnoticed until it was needed. As years passed, castles evolved. Builders learned from experience. They thickened walls. They angled surfaces to deflect projectiles. They added multiple layers of defense, so that if one failed, another remained. But even as designs changed, the underlying principles stayed the same. Control space. Slow movement. Protect resources. Use gravity. Use stone. Use time. Walking through a medieval castle today, one does not hear the noise of battle. Instead, there is silence. Stone absorbs sound. Corridors soften footsteps. The air feels heavy, not threatening, but calm. These buildings were never hurried, and they do not invite haste now. They encourage slow movement, careful observation, and quiet reflection. At night, when torches were extinguished and the castle slept, the walls continued their work. They held back wind. They held in warmth. They stood as they always had, doing nothing and yet doing everything. This quiet endurance is the true genius of medieval castle design. Not brilliance in the modern sense, but wisdom built over generations, layered slowly and left behind in stone. And so, as the mind begins to rest, it can wander these walls without effort. It can follow the curve of a staircase, trace the rough surface of a wall, pause beneath an archway, and feel the cool stillness of a place designed to last. Nothing needs to happen here. Nothing is urgent. The castle remains, patient and unmoving, as it has for centuries, quietly standing guard while the world sleeps. The castle settles further into stillness as the hours pass, and nothing within its walls feels the need to move quickly. Stone does not rush, and neither does the design that shaped it. Every surface carries the calm intention of people who understood that permanence is achieved not through speed, but through consistency. The longer one remains within the imagined space of a medieval castle, the more obvious it becomes that its intelligence is quiet, almost invisible. The floors, worn smooth by centuries of slow footsteps, do not echo loudly. Sound is absorbed, softened, reduced to a dull presence. Voices never traveled far here, and neither did sudden noises. This was comforting during long nights, when too much sound might invite worry. Silence was not emptiness. It was stability. It told the inhabitants that everything was where it should be. Storage rooms were built deep within the structure, away from outer walls where temperature fluctuated. Barrels rested against stone, unmoving. Grain sat patiently in sacks. Nothing about these rooms suggested urgency. Supplies were not meant to be accessed often. They were meant to exist quietly, waiting for a time when they might be needed. Even the act of storing food was an exercise in calm foresight. Windows were placed sparingly and always with intention. They framed the outside world in narrow slices, limiting distraction. Light entered in controlled amounts, moving slowly across walls as the sun passed overhead. Shadows shifted almost imperceptibly. Time could be measured not by clocks, but by the angle of light touching a familiar stone. The castle's relationship with weather was one of acceptance rather than resistance. Wind flowed around towers instead of striking flat surfaces. Rain was guided downward and away. Snow rested briefly before sliding off roofs and ledges. The building did not fight nature, it accommodated it. This cooperation reduced strain and extended life, a lesson learned through observation rather than theory. Inside, furniture was heavy and simple. Tables did not move easily. Benches stayed where they were placed. This reduced noise, prevented clutter, and reinforced the sense that everything had its position. Nothing needed to be rearranged often. Stability was preferred over flexibility. Even pathways within the castle encouraged predictable movement. Corridors followed logical routes. Turns were gradual. Sudden changes in direction were rare. This made navigation intuitive, even in low light. The castle did not confuse those who lived within it. It guided them gently, without instruction. At night, torchlight flickered softly against walls, revealing textures rather than details. Stone absorbed light unevenly, creating patterns that shifted slowly as flames moved. These patterns were familiar, repeated night after night, offering comfort through repetition. The mind learned them, recognized them, and found rest in their sameness. The genius of medieval castle design was not about perfection. It was about tolerance. Tolerance for weather. Tolerance for wear. Tolerance for human error. Walls could crack slightly without failing. Floors could sink unevenly without collapse. The structure allowed imperfection, knowing that rigidity leads to weakness. Stair landings widened occasionally, allowing people to pause, to rest, to let others pass. This was not luxury. It was practicality. Fatigue was expected. The castle acknowledged human limits and adjusted accordingly. Over time, ivy might climb outer walls, birds might nest in crevices, moss might soften sharp edges. These changes were slow and gentle. The castle accepted them. It did not need to remain untouched to remain strong. Its design allowed coexistence with the natural world. When seasons changed, daily routines adjusted subtly. Fires burned longer. Cloaks were hung closer to hearths. Doors were opened less often. These shifts were small, habitual, and unremarkable. The castle supported them quietly, without demanding attention. Even abandonment did not end the castle's purpose. Long after voices faded and fires went cold, the walls continued to stand. They held shape. They resisted collapse. Their design allowed them to survive neglect better than many other structures. They required presence, but did not depend on it. And so, as the night deepens and thoughts become slower, the castle remains an ideal place for the mind to wander without effort. There is no story to follow, no event to anticipate. Only stone placed carefully, doing what it has always done. Holding weight, creating shelter, waiting patiently. The genius is not loud, it does not announce itself. It exists in thickness, in angles, in the steady refusal to change quickly. Like sleep itself, the castle arrives gradually, settles fully, and remains without disturbance. And within that calm endurance, the mind is free to rest, untroubled, drifting quietly as the ancient walls continue their silent watch through the night. The castle continues to exist in its own quiet rhythm, unaffected by the passing of hours or the turning of seasons. Morning light moves slowly across stone courtyards, touching walls that were placed with deliberate care. Each stone rests where it was meant to rest, held in place not only by mortar, but by gravity and balance. Medieval builders understood weight. They understood pressure. They understood that stone prefers to press downward, not outward, and so walls were thickest at their base, tapering gently as they rose, allowing the structure to support itself without strain. The floors within the castle were rarely perfectly level. This was not a mistake. Slight slopes allowed water to drain, dust to settle in corners, and daily life to continue without constant maintenance. Smooth perfection was unnecessary. Function mattered more than appearance. The unevenness encouraged careful steps, slower movement, and awareness of one's surroundings. Everything within the castle encouraged patience. Doors were low, requiring people to bow slightly as they entered. This conserved heat, strengthened the structure, and reminded all who passed through that the building, not the individual, was in control. Ceilings were high where smoke needed to rise, and low where warmth needed to be retained. Even silence was considered. Thick walls absorbed echoes, creating spaces where voices softened and noise faded quickly. The towers, rising above the walls, were not always used for combat. Many served as storage rooms, sleeping quarters, or quiet observation points. Their height allowed for long views of the surrounding countryside, but also allowed fresh air to circulate through narrow openings. Wind moved slowly through these spaces, carrying away dampness and stale air. Nothing rushed. Air, like time, moved at the pace of the stone, spiral staircases wound upward without symmetry. Each step varied slightly in height and depth, discouraging fast movement and forcing those who climbed them to pay attention. Muscle memory could not take over. One had to remain present step by step. The stairs were worn smooth by centuries of use, each shallow dip a record of countless footsteps. None of them hurried. In winter, the castle grew quieter. Snow gathered against the outer walls, adding insulation. Inside, fires burned steadily, not brightly. Wood was consumed slowly. Flames were watched carefully. Fire was useful, but dangerous. Every hearth was placed with intention. Away from wooden beams, surrounded by stone, its smoke guided upward through chimneys that had been tested by years of steady use. In summer, the castle remained cool. Sunlight struck the outer walls, but rarely penetrated deeply. Interiors stayed dim and calm. Thick stone delayed heat, releasing it only after sunset, when cooler air returned. This natural regulation required no effort. The castle simply existed, responding to its environment as it always had. Castles were not isolated ideas. Each one borrowed from those that came before it. Builders traveled, observed, and remembered. Knowledge passed quietly from hand to hand, from master mason to apprentice, through gestures, habits, and repeated motions. Measurements were made using bodies, not numbers. A foot was a foot, an arm span was an arm span. Human scale guided design, ensuring that spaces felt neither overwhelming nor fragile. Walls were sometimes hollow, containing passages known only to a few. These passages allowed defenders to move unseen, to store supplies, or simply to reduce the overall weight of the structure. Hidden doors blended into stone, invisible unless one knew where to look. Secrecy was not dramatic, it was practical. It reduced effort, it conserved energy. The roofs of castles were often steeply pitched, allowing rain and snow to slide away easily. Wooden beams supported stone tiles or shingles, arranged to overlap just enough to keep water out without trapping moisture. The sound of rain on a castle roof was steady and dull, never sharp. It was a sound that blended into the background, becoming part of the castle's constant presence. Courtyards served as quiet centers. Light entered here. Air moved freely. Life unfolded without urgency. People crossed these spaces slowly, carrying tools, baskets, or nothing at all. The open sky above reminded inhabitants of the wider world, but the surrounding walls ensured that the outside remained distant, controlled, and muted. Even decoration was restrained. Carvings were shallow, patterns simple. Excess detail weakened stone. Builders knew this. Strength came from simplicity. Lines were straight. Curves were purposeful. Arches distributed weight evenly, allowing openings without collapse. The arch was one of the castle's most trusted forms, repeated again and again, never questioned. As years passed, repairs were made quietly. A stone replaced here. Mortar renewed there. Castles were never finished. They were maintained. Their design allowed for change without disruption. New walls could be added. Old ones reinforced. Towers raised slightly higher. The structure accepted these changes without complaint. When danger came, the castle did not panic. It did not react quickly. It simply performed as it had been designed to do. Attackers grew tired. Time stretched. Supplies dwindled outside while stores remained inside. The castle waited. Waiting was its greatest strength. And when danger passed, life resumed without ceremony. Gates opened. Animals returned. Smoke rose gently from chimneys once more. The castle did not celebrate survival. It expected it. Now, centuries later, the castle still stands, not because it was extraordinary, but because it was sensible. Its genius lies in restraint, repetition, and quiet understanding. Stone upon stone, wall within wall, nothing excessive. Nothing hurried. As the listener rests, thoughts can slow to match the pace of these ancient structures. There is no need to remember every detail. There is no need to imagine conflict or noise. Only stone, weight, balance, and time. The castle remains steady and unchanged, holding silence within its walls, allowing the night to pass gently, one quiet moment at a time. The castle continues to breathe in its own slow way, though no breath is visible and no sound announces it. Stone expands slightly with warmth and contracts gently with cold, a movement so small it cannot be felt, yet constant and reliable. Medieval builders did not measure this with numbers, but they understood it through experience. They left room for the stone to live, to shift just enough without cracking. This allowance is part of the quiet intelligence that keeps the walls standing long after their builders are gone. Along the inner walls, ledges catch dust as it settles. Dust gathers slowly, layer by layer, never rushed. It softens edges, dulls surfaces, and makes everything feel older and calmer. In a castle, nothing is ever new for long. Freshness fades into familiarity, and familiarity becomes comfort. The ceilings above are supported by beams set at steady intervals. These beams do not demand attention. They simply remain where they were placed, distributing weight evenly, trusting the stone to do its share of the work. Trust between materials was essential. Wood flexed where stone could not. Stone anchored where wood might weaken. Together, they created balance. Footsteps within the castle were measured, not hurried. People learned quickly that rushing served no purpose. Corridors were long, stairs were narrow. Doors were heavy. Speed was discouraged by design. Calm movement became habit, and habit shaped behavior. The castle taught patience without words. Light from the outside world entered only when permitted. Slits in the walls admitted narrow beams that stretched across floors and faded quietly as clouds passed. These moments of light were brief and gentle, never overwhelming. Darkness was not feared here. It was expected, familiar, and manageable. The walls themselves carried marks of use. Scratches from furniture, chips from tools, polished patches where hands had brushed past for generations. These signs were not flaws, they were records of steady life. The castle was not a monument frozen in time. It was a place that accepted touch, wear, and presence. When rain fell, it followed paths designed for it. Channels guided water downward. Gutters led it away. Puddles rarely lingered. Moisture was controlled quietly, without effort. This prevented decay, reduced discomfort, and preserved the structure year after year. The design anticipated the ordinary inconveniences of life and addressed them calmly. Sound from the outside world arrived muted. Hooves, voices, wind through trees, all softened by distance and stone. Inside, the castle felt separate, contained, and steady. This separation was not isolation. It was protection from excess. The world could be observed without being allowed inside fully. In the deepest rooms, where sunlight never reached, the air remained cool and still. These spaces felt timeless. Day and night mattered less here. Time slowed, marked only by routine. These rooms reminded inhabitants that not everything needed light, motion, or change to endure. The castle did not encourage decoration for its own sake. Color came from tapestries, easily moved and replaced. Stone remained neutral, allowing human presence to add warmth without altering the structure. This separation of permanence and comfort was deliberate. Stone lasted. Cloth changed. Life adapted. Even the placement of bells, when present, was considered carefully. Sound traveled outward, not inward. Warnings reached the countryside, but echoes inside remained restrained. Communication without disturbance was valued. Alertness did not require chaos. As generations passed, stories faded, names were forgotten, but the design remained understandable. One could enter a castle centuries later and still know where to go, where to stand, where to rest. The logic of the space was clear, even without instruction. This clarity is part of its lasting strength. And so the castle stands, neither proud nor humble, simply present. It does not demand admiration. It offers shelter. It offers quiet. It offers the reassurance of something built to last without needing constant attention. As sleep approaches, the mind can settle into this steady rhythm. Thoughts can slow to the pace of stone warming and cooling. There is nothing to solve, nothing to anticipate. Only walls that hold, floors that support, and silence that remains unbroken. The genius of medieval castles is not something to analyze at this hour. It is something to rest within, gently, as the night continues on, unchanging, calm, and patient. The night deepens further, and the imagined castle remains exactly as it was, unchanged and untroubled. No signal is given for the passing of time. There are no clocks ticking loudly, no bells sounding hours. Time inside a medieval castle was felt rather than counted. It moved with the length of shadows, with the cooling of stone, with the slow dimming of firelight. This unmeasured passage of hours encouraged rest, because nothing demanded attention all at once. The walls continue to hold their weight with quiet certainty. Their thickness creates a sense of enclosure that is not tight, but reassuring. It is the feeling of being held rather than trapped. Medieval builders understood that security was not only physical, but mental. A space that feels solid allows the mind to relax. The castle provided this without effort. Benches along walls offered places to sit, not for comfort but for pause. Sitting was part of the rhythm of movement. Walk, stop, rest, continue. The architecture acknowledged the body's needs without indulgence. Nothing invited lingering too long, but nothing forced haste either. Balance was always present. The air within the castle remains cool and even. It does not rush through like a draft, nor does it stagnate. Small openings, cracks, and passages allow gentle circulation. This quiet movement of air carries away smoke, moisture, and heat without being noticed. Comfort here is subtle. It does not announce itself. In storage chambers, the smell of stone and earth is steady and unchanging. These scents become background, barely registered, yet deeply familiar. They signal safety and continuity. The senses grow calm when nothing new demands interpretation. The castle's layout avoids excess height where it is unnecessary. Floors are stacked efficiently, reducing strain on lower walls. Weight flows downward, exactly as intended. Gravity is not resisted. It is used. This cooperation with natural forces is part of the castle's quiet wisdom. Doors open inward more often than outward, protected from wind and impact. Hinges are thick and simple. Repairs can be made easily. Replacement is possible without altering the structure. Everything is designed for maintenance, not perfection. Longevity depends on the ability to fix small things calmly. At night, even animals within the castle grow still. Stables are placed where noise and scent do not disturb living quarters. Separation of spaces prevents unnecessary disruption. The design anticipates daily life and arranges it so that routines overlap gently rather than collide. The castle does not encourage large gatherings in most spaces. Rooms are modest in size. This limits noise, heat, and disorder. Large halls exist, but they are few, and even they are controlled by thick walls and high ceilings. Sound disperses upward, leaving calm below. The more one imagines this place, the more repetitive it becomes, and that repetition is soothing. Stone repeats stone. Arch follows arch. Step follows step. The mind stops searching for novelty because none is required. Familiarity becomes restful. Outside, weather continues its slow cycle. Wind moves past towers. Clouds pass overhead. Rain falls, then stops. None of this disturbs the interior. The castle receives the world, filters it, and releases it quietly. This gentle separation allows those inside to rest without disconnection. Even when empty, the castle remains complete. It does not depend on presence to feel whole. This independence is part of its strength. It waits without impatience. It stands without effort. And so, as thoughts soften and awareness drifts, the castle continues exactly as it has been described, unchanging, steady, unremarkable in its excellence. There is nothing more it needs to do. There is nothing more that needs to be understood. The genius of medieval castles is not a concept to hold on to, but a feeling to settle into. A feeling of weight resting where it belongs, of time passing without pressure, of shelter that does not ask to be noticed. Within this imagined stone enclosure, the mind can slow to stillness. The walls remain, the night remains. And sleep, like the castle itself, arrives not suddenly, but gradually, patiently, and without disturbance. The castle remains, and nothing about it suggests that it expects anything to change. Its strength does not come from alertness or readiness, but from calm certainty. Stone does not watch or listen, yet it is always prepared, simply by being what it is. This quality makes the castle an easy place for the mind to stay, because nothing within it reacts suddenly or demands response. Along the inner edges of the walls, shadows settle and remain undisturbed. They do not shift quickly, and they do not hide surprises. They exist as part of the structure, filling corners softly, making spaces feel complete rather than empty. Darkness here is gentle and predictable, not something to resist. The castle's proportions continue to guide behavior even when no one is present. Doorways suggest how to enter. Staircases suggest how to climb. Walls suggest where to pause. These suggestions are subtle, almost instinctive. The design does not instruct directly. It allows understanding to form naturally. Stone steps cool further as the night deepens, releasing the heat they absorbed during the day. This release happens slowly, evenly, without sudden change. The temperature stabilizes, encouraging stillness. In such an environment, movement feels unnecessary. The castle's materials age quietly. Wood dries and hardens. Stone smooths where touched. Iron dulls without weakening. Nothing tries to remain new. Change is accepted, but only at a pace that preserves function. This slow acceptance creates a sense of trust. The building does not fight time, it moves with it. In the corners of rooms, small imperfections exist like curves in walls, uneven joints between stones, faint cracks that never grow. These details do not disrupt the structure. They soften it. They remind the observer that the castle was made by hands, patiently, without hurry. Perfection was never the goal. Reliability was. The castle's silence deepens as the imagined night continues. Any remaining sounds, wind brushing stone, wood settling gently, are spaced far apart. They do not interrupt rest. They confirm presence. Silence is not total, but balanced. Even the idea of defense, once central to the castle's purpose, now feels distant and abstract. The walls do not prepare for attack. They simply stand. Their design has already done all the work required of it. There is nothing left to decide. This completeness is what makes the castle such a restful place for thought. There are no unfinished elements. No unresolved tensions. Everything is placed, supported, and contained. As the listener remains within this steady space, thoughts naturally slow. Ideas lose their edges. Attention softens. The mind no longer looks for progression or conclusion. It rests within repetition, within weight, within quiet endurance. The castle does not mark an ending. It does not signal a beginning. It exists between, holding time gently without shaping it. This neutrality allows rest to arrive without effort. And so the stone walls continue their quiet task through the night. Holding, supporting, remaining. Nothing more is required of them, and nothing more is required of the listener. Sleep approaches in the same way the castle was built, slowly, steadily, one calm moment resting upon the next. The castle continues without interruption, as it always has, allowing the night to move past it without comment. There is no center of attention here, no single place that demands focus. Every wall, every passage, every stone shares the same quiet importance. Nothing competes, nothing stands out. This evenness is what allows rest to deepen. The floors remain cool beneath imagined footsteps, steady and dependable. They do not shift or creak unnecessarily. Their weight presses downward into the earth, connecting the structure to the ground below. This connection is constant, unbroken, and reassuring. The castle does not feel temporary. It feels settled. Along the parapets above, the open sky stretches calmly. Stars pass slowly, unnoticed by the stone beneath them. The castle does not respond to the sky's movement. It does not reach upward or lean outward. It remains where it was placed, content with its position. Inside, the arrangement of rooms continues to make sense without explanation. Private spaces remain tucked away. Open areas remain central. The design supports separation when needed and connection when appropriate. This organization prevents confusion and reduces strain. The mind appreciates spaces that know what they are meant to be. The castle's walls do not trap sound, but neither do they release it freely. Noise dissipates gently, leaving behind quiet. This balance prevents both echo and emptiness. It creates an atmosphere where even small sounds feel softened, rounded, and safe. Stone surfaces retain a faint coolness that never becomes uncomfortable. They regulate sensation just as they regulate temperature. Extremes are avoided. Everything remains within a narrow, tolerable range. This moderation is one of the castle's most subtle achievements. As hours pass, nothing grows urgent. No task emerges. No signal calls for action. The castle does not require attention to continue functioning. It exists independently, carrying its purpose within its form. The simplicity of this existence invites the mind to do the same. Thoughts become fewer. They slow, then stretch out, then fade into long pauses. There is no need to follow them. They pass like distant weather, observed without engagement. Even memory loses its sharpness here. The castle does not encourage reflection on the past or planning for the future. It holds everything in the present moment steady and unchanged. This present is wide and calm, offering no resistance to rest. The genius of medieval castles reveals itself most clearly in this stillness. Not in walls or towers alone, but in the feeling they create when nothing happens. A feeling of enoughness, of completion, of quiet reliability. And so the imagined castle remains through the late hours, unchanged as the night continues its slow movement. Stone rests upon stone, space rests within walls. Silence rests over everything. There is nowhere else to go. There is nothing else to add. The design has already done its work. The castle stays, patient and unmoving, as sleep settles gently, like dust on stone, soft and unnoticed, until even the idea of the castle fades into rest. The castle allows this fading without resistance. It does not hold on to attention. It does not insist on being remembered in detail. Like sleep itself, it becomes less defined the longer one remains with it. Edges soften, distances blur. Stone turns from texture into presence, and presence turns into calm. Somewhere within the thickness of the walls, empty spaces exist that were never meant to be entered. These pockets reduce weight, ease pressure, and serve no visible purpose. Their usefulness lies in what they remove rather than what they add. This quiet subtraction is part of the castle's intelligence. Not everything needs to be filled. The ground beneath the castle remains firm and unmoving. Layers of earth support the structure just as the structure supports everything above it. This relationship is stable and silent. Nothing shifts suddenly, nothing sinks unexpectedly. Trust forms naturally when the foundation does not call attention to itself. If one imagines sitting against an inner wall, the stone would feel cool and solid, neither welcoming nor unkind. It does not change to suit the body. The body adjusts instead, finding stillness. Over time, the coolness becomes neutral, then unnoticed. Sensation fades into comfort through repetition. The castle does not rely on symmetry to feel balanced. Some walls are thicker than others, some towers rise higher. Some spaces feel tighter. Balance is achieved through compensation rather than sameness. This flexible balance allows the whole to remain steady even when parts differ. Uniformity was never required. Even the idea of danger, once central to the castle's purpose, dissolves in this quiet. The defenses no longer feel like defenses. They are simply walls. They no longer separate inside from threat but inside from distraction. Their function has softened with time. The night outside continues its slow movement, but inside the castle, time feels suspended. There is no sense of waiting for morning. Darkness does not imply an ending. It is simply another condition, like stone or air. The castle is equally suited to light and dark. Thoughts, if they arise at all, arrive slowly and without urgency. They drift through like cool air through a narrow passage, passing without disturbance. The mind does not need to follow them. It can remain still, supported by the same quiet logic that holds the walls upright. The repetition of stone, the repetition of space, the repetition of calm, these form a pattern that does not demand attention. It simply exists. Patterns without variation are restful. They ask nothing from memory or anticipation. In this imagined place, nothing improves and nothing declines. The castle does not strive, it does not decay quickly. It remains in a long middle state where change happens too slowly to notice. This long middle is where rest feels safest. And so the castle continues, not as an object to observe, but as an environment to settle into. Its genius no longer needs explanation. It has become background, atmosphere, quiet support. Stone remains where it was placed. Weight remains where it belongs. Silence remains unbroken. The mind, sensing no need to remain alert, can finally let go. Just as the castle holds without effort, sleep arrives without force, gently, steadily, until even the idea of walls, towers, and stone fades into a calm, unmarked rest that continues on its own. The calm does not end, because there is nothing here that leads toward an ending. The castle does not move toward a conclusion, and neither does the night around it. Everything remains in a steady, unchanging state that feels complete without progress. This sense of completeness is quiet and unremarkable, and that is why it is restful. Within the castle, the spaces between walls feel just as important as the walls themselves. Empty air holds shape, guided gently by stone. Corridors remain open without feeling exposed. Rooms feel enclosed without feeling small. This balance between openness and enclosure allows comfort to settle naturally, without thought. The stone continues to hold the faint memory of warmth from earlier hours, releasing it slowly into the surrounding air. This release is gradual enough that it cannot be tracked. There is no moment when warmth ends and coolness begins. There is only a steady middle state where sensation softens and fades. The castle does not create sudden contrasts. Light fades slowly, sound diminishes gently. Temperature shifts are mild. Everything happens in small increments, allowing the body and mind to adjust without effort. Nothing surprises. Nothing interrupts. The weight of the walls presses downward into the ground, but this pressure is not felt as force. It is felt as stability. The earth below accepts the load without resistance. This mutual acceptance between ground and stone creates a feeling of permanence that does not require belief or reassurance. It simply exists. If footsteps were imagined now, they would sound distant and unimportant. The castle would absorb them easily. They would not linger. They would not echo. Movement here leaves no lasting disturbance. Stillness always returns. The design of the castle does not encourage lingering thoughts. There are no sharp angles to catch attention, no bright surfaces to reflect light suddenly. Everything remains muted, softened by age and repetition. The senses receive less information, and so they gradually relax. Even the idea of purpose fades. The castle no longer feels like something built for defense or control. It feels like a structure that has completed its task and now simply remains. Remaining is enough. Nothing more is required. The night outside continues, but its presence is distant and gentle. Wind brushes stone without urgency. Stars pass overhead without being noticed. The castle does not respond. It does not need to. It is already settled. Thoughts, if any remain, grow slower and less defined. They no longer form full shapes. They stretch, thin out, and dissolve into pauses. Awareness softens, becoming less focused on place, less focused on form. The castle becomes less something to imagine and more something to rest within. Its details no longer matter. Its presence is enough. Stone becomes weight. Weight becomes stillness. Stillness becomes quiet. And in that quiet, there is nothing to hold on to, nothing to follow, nothing to finish. The castle continues as it always has, unchanging, steady, and calm, while the mind drifts gently away from description, away from thought, and into a deep, effortless rest that needs no words at all. The stillness remains unbroken, and the castle does not react to the passing of these moments. It has no awareness of time moving forward or backward. It simply exists in a long present, where nothing is expected to happen and nothing needs to be remembered. This timeless quality allows the mind to loosen its grip, because there is no sequence to follow and no destination ahead. The stone surfaces no longer feel cold or warm. They feel neutral, balanced, and familiar. Sensation fades into background awareness, and background awareness fades into quiet. The body, like the castle, finds a position that requires no adjustment. Spaces within the castle seem to grow softer, not by changing shape, but by losing definition. Corners feel less sharp. Distances feel shorter. Everything becomes gently rounded by darkness and silence. The architecture no longer stands apart from the night. It blends into it. The castle's strength is no longer something to notice. It does not feel heavy or imposing. It feels dependable in a way that does not call for attention. Like the ground beneath one's feet, it supports without being felt. Nothing stirs inside the walls. No movement suggests interruption. No sound hints at change. Even the idea of motion feels distant, unnecessary. The castle has settled into a complete stillness that does not feel empty, only calm. If the mind drifts now, it drifts without direction. Thoughts do not connect. Images do not sharpen. Awareness spreads out, becoming wide and unfocused. There is no need to hold on to the image of towers or walls. They remain whether they are imagined or not. The repetition that once defined a castle, stone after stone, wall after wall, has done its work. The pattern no longer needs to be perceived. It has become rhythm, and rhythm has become rest. The night continues, but it no longer feels like night. It feels like a pause that has no edge. Darkness does not suggest sleep or waking. It simply surrounds everything evenly. The castle, in its quiet endurance, offers nothing new and asks for nothing in return. This exchange, nothing given, nothing taken, is what allows the deepest rest. The mind is free because it is not required to engage. And so the presence of stone fades into the presence of silence. Silence fades into stillness. Stillness fades into something softer, something quieter, where even the idea of a castle is no longer necessary. What remains is calm without shape, rest without effort, and a steady, Gentle quiet that continues on its own, uninterrupted, holding everything lightly as sleep deepens and carries the mind onward without sound, without thought, and without end. The quiet deepens further until even the sense of space begins to blur. The castle no longer feels like a structure built of stone and wood, but like an expanse of calm. Walls, towers, and corridors exist only as gentle impressions, fading into the background of awareness. The mind no longer needs to trace their edges or remember their purpose. Everything becomes uniform, soft, and slow. The air itself seems slower now. Breaths lengthen naturally, unhurried. Temperature settles evenly around the body, neither warm nor cold. The faintest movements of air through unseen gaps, of distant leaves brushing against the outer walls, exist, but do not demand notice. They are simply part of the environment, part of the gentle rhythm that carries the night onward. Stone no longer feels solid in the usual way. It becomes presence rather than object. Gravity is unnoticed. Weight is distributed evenly. Surfaces are absorbed into perception, not felt as surfaces at all. Every layer of the castle, every detail that once seemed essential, now becomes soft repetition, comforting in its constancy. Time continues, though it is impossible to measure. Hours may pass, or perhaps only minutes. The mind no longer attempts to track them. There is no urgency to note their passage. Awareness expands slowly, comfortably, like a tide moving without waves. Even thought begins to thin. Ideas that remain are fleeting, diffuse, and unimportant. Memories dissolve into the quiet, fading as gently as the faint light of distant stars. The castle's calm encourages this dissolution. Nothing is required, nothing is expected. The rhythm of stillness is sufficient. Sounds that persist wind. The settling of stone. Distant rustling are no longer interruptions but part of a continuous soft backdrop. They are neither pleasant nor unpleasant, neither sharp nor jarring. They are just present, steady and predictable, blending seamlessly into the pervasive calm. The walls no longer feel protective in the conscious sense. Their function has become abstract, absorbed into the environment itself. The castle exists as support, as framework, as soft, unchanging structure for the mind to rest against. The weight of history, the labor of generations, the careful planning of centuries, all of it is felt not as story but as atmosphere. And in this atmosphere, sleep can deepen fully. There is no struggle to let go. There is no tension to release. The body, mind, and imagination are absorbed into a gentle, undisturbed current. The castle, the night, and the quiet merge seamlessly, forming a single field of stillness. The stone, the air, the silence, everything persists, holding its place patiently, allowing the mind to drift completely. Shape, purpose, even awareness itself begin to fade. What remains is only calm, vast, and steady. And within this calm, the deepest rest arrives, slowly, inevitably, carrying everything into unbroken, effortless sleep. The stillness stretches onward, longer than thought, wider than attention. The castle, imagined or remembered, no longer feels like a collection of walls and towers. It has become a space without edges, a quiet expanse that holds everything gently. No detail demands notice, no form calls for focus. All that remains is the steady presence of being. The mind drifts without effort, carried by the repetition of calm. Steps, stairs, corridors, arches once distinct, now merge into a continuous rhythm. Each element overlaps softly with the next, creating a subtle pattern that needs no observation. The brain no longer seeks novelty, and so it relaxes completely. Air continues to move slowly, cooling and softening the senses. Temperature and sound blend together, neither intrusive nor absent. The faintest hint of breeze through imagined windows or openings brushes lightly, unnoticed, but comforting. Even the faint sounds of distant life, animals, rustling leaves, faraway water, become part of the seamless background. The stone no longer asserts its presence. It does not press down or restrict. It exists as part of the calm, a weight that is stable but not felt. The floors, walls, and towers all dissolve into perception, leaving only a gentle sense of support. Even gravity seems softer, more forgiving. Time, too, becomes irrelevant. The night has no hours. Moments flow into one another. There is no need to count, measure, or remember. The mind surrenders chronology and drifts freely in the continuity of stillness. Even thought itself begins to thin further. Memories fade. Ideas slow. Patterns of planning, worry, or curiosity dissolve like mist. The castle no longer exists as a concept or image, it exists only as calm. Awareness lingers on nothing in particular, and that is enough. The genius of the castle, once evident in design and function, is now present as essence. Its intelligence no longer needs to be recognized. It holds the space effortlessly, giving the mind a container for rest. Walls, gates, towers, staircases, they exist only in memory, and memory itself becomes optional. The night deepens. Darkness is steady, undisturbed, safe. Even imagined light moonlight on stone, torchlight flickering softens into shadow without contrast. The castle has no surprises, the world outside has no urgency. Everything exists as gentle, continuous presence. And finally, the mind surrenders completely. The body relaxes fully. Awareness softens into nothing more than being. The castle, the night, the quiet all merge into a single unbroken field of calm. Sleep now carries everything beyond attention. Shapes, sounds, and thought fade entirely. What remains is rest steady, deep, and unending. The castle holds still, patiently, while the sleeper drifts completely into untroubled, effortless sleep. The calm stretches onward, deeper than thought, wider than attention. The castle, no longer distinct in stone or timber, exists only as a sense of steadiness. Walls and towers, floors and staircases, they have all softened into a single continuous presence, a quiet expanse in which nothing intrudes. The mind needs no anchor. It floats gently, supported by this unchanging stillness. Air moves softly through imagined corridors, cooling and steadying the senses. Sound exists only as a subtle background hum wind against stone, distant rustling, the faint settling of timber. Nothing is urgent, nothing sharp. Each noise blends seamlessly into the quiet, becoming almost imperceptible. The weight of stone is present without pressure. Floors hold steadily beneath imagined feet. Walls support silently. The castle has no motion, no demand, no tension. Its stability has become invisible yet undeniable, offering an effortless container for the mind to rest in. Time too has dissolved. There is no hour, no shift, no progression. Moments flow softly into one another, seamless and unmarked. Awareness drifts without need to track it. Sleep moves naturally into these spaces, unhurried and patient. Thoughts, if they arise, are fleeting, dissolving as quickly as they appear. Memories fade, concerns lose weight, curiosity drifts away. Even the image of the castle itself becomes unnecessary. What remains is the essence of its calm, a quiet presence that supports rest without demand. The night deepens further. Darkness is neither heavy nor oppressive. It is soft, wide, and embracing. The mind has no reason to resist it. Light is unnecessary. Sound is unnecessary. Only the gentle, steady presence of the castle remains, infinite in its patient support. All awareness slows. Breaths lengthen and even out. Muscles relax completely. Attention dissolves, fading into the steady field of stillness around and within. There is no effort, no requirement to hold on to anything. Presence itself is enough. The genius of the castle, once evident in design and function, now exists purely as atmosphere. It is not seen or remembered. It is felt as calm, as steadiness, as quiet assurance. The structure has done its work without exertion. The mind, like the castle, rests effortlessly. And now sleep carries all thought, all awareness, all sensation. The castle continues, patient and unmoving, while the sleeper drifts deeper into unbroken, effortless rest. Walls, towers, corridors, and stone fade completely. What remains is stillness, quiet and calm, a space without edges, without motion, without interruption, in which sleep flows endlessly and completely. The stillness continues, stretching outward in all directions, beyond walls, towers, and corridors. The castle has ceased to be a place to imagine. It has become a presence, a gentle field of calm that holds everything within it. There are no details to follow, no surfaces to notice, no shapes to trace. Only the sense of steadiness remains. Air moves almost imperceptibly, carrying with it the faintest hint of coolness, soft and even. There is no sharpness, no sudden draft, only the slow, unchanging rhythm of space itself. Sounds exist, but they do not intrude. The settling of stone, the soft brushing of wind, the distant echo of movement all blend into a quiet hum, continuous and reassuring. Stone holds weight without effort. Floors support without resistance. Walls enclose without pressure. The castle exists as a stable presence, effortless in its endurance, and the mind rests within that stability. Awareness stretches wide, encompassing nothing in particular, drifting gently, weightless. Time no longer has meaning. Moments flow together, unmeasured, unmarked. Sleep arrives naturally within this suspension, deepening slowly layer by layer. There is no need to track it, no need to anticipate. Awareness itself becomes soft, diffuse, unneeded. Thoughts, if they arise, are thin and fleeting. They pass without focus or importance. Even memory loosens, fading into the background. The castle no longer exists as a place or an image. It exists only as a feeling of quiet, steady support. Calm surrounds and permeates everything. Darkness is complete, yet comforting. There is no fear, no tension, no strain. Even light, imagined or remembered, has softened into indistinct shades, gentle and neutral. The night exists without demand, and the castle exists within it without effort. Breaths lengthen, muscles release tension, and awareness flows outward, merging with the calm around it. Nothing presses inward, nothing intrudes. The mind dissolves into stillness, becoming part of the castle's quiet endurance. The genius of medieval design is no longer understood as technique or structure. It is simply present as calm, as support, as patient steadiness. The walls, towers, corridors, and floors are no longer shapes or objects. They are essence. They hold sleep gently, endlessly, effortlessly, and so the mind drifts fully into rest. The castle remains, patient and unmoving, as sleep deepens and carries everything into a vast, unbroken calm. Stone, air, silence, and stillness merge into one, forming a space without edges, without motion, without thought, a space where rest continues indefinitely, complete and uninterrupted. The calm stretches farther, wider, until even the edges of the castle itself begin to blur. Towers, walls, corridors, they no longer exist as objects. They exist only as the gentle sense of steadiness, a quiet presence that fills the mind without drawing attention. There is no structure to follow, no detail to observe, no story to track. Only the continuous patient weight of calm remains. The air inside this imagined space moves softly, barely noticeable. There is no draft, no sudden shift, only a steady, almost imperceptible flow. Sounds wind against stone, the faint settling of walls, distant echoes exist, but they do not intrude. They blend seamlessly into the quiet, becoming part of the continuous backdrop. Stone holds weight without pressure. Floors support without effort. Walls enclose without constriction. The castle exists simply and steadily, a stable container for rest. Awareness stretches into the space, diffusing gently, without focus or direction. Time no longer matters. There is no hour, no measure, no sequence. Moments blend into one another, seamless and unbroken. Sleep moves naturally into this unmeasured space, deepening steadily, gently, without interruption. Thoughts, if they appear, drift without attachment. They thin, lose clarity, and dissolve. Memories fade. Plans, worries, curiosity, all recede. Even the image of the castle itself becomes unnecessary. What remains is pure calm, a soft, steady presence that supports rest without effort. Darkness is gentle, wide, and embracing. Light, imagined or real, softens into shadow without contrast or sharpness. There are no surprises, no abrupt changes, nothing to interrupt the quiet. The environment is complete, self-contained, and entirely restful. Breaths slow and deepen. Muscles release their tension. Awareness softens until it merges with the calm around it. There is no need to hold on to anything. Presence itself is enough. The genius of the castle, once evident in walls, towers, and gates, now exists as essence. Its structure has faded into quiet endurance. Its strength is invisible, but undeniably felt. The castle holds everything gently, allowing the mind to drift fully into deep, effortless sleep. And so the night continues without change. The castle remains patient, unmoving, unchanging. Sleep flows endlessly, without shape, without thought, without interruption, carried by the gentle, steady presence of this timeless place. This rest is complete. It is uninterrupted. It is unhurried. It is infinite. The stillness deepens further, until even the sensation of space softens and spreads. The castle no longer exists as a structure to be imagined. It becomes a field of calm, a quiet expanse that fills perception without drawing attention. Walls, towers, floors, and corridors have all melted into a seamless presence, steady and unchanging. Nothing needs to be followed, nothing examined, only the persistent, gentle steadiness remains. Air moves almost imperceptibly, carrying with it the faintest traces of coolness and soft motion. Sound is present, yet subdued. The subtle settling of stone, the whisper of wind across distant parapets, the gentle brush of leaves somewhere far beyond the walls. These sounds do not startle or demand attention, they exist as part of a continuous, unobtrusive rhythm. Stone continues to support weight without effort, floors remain steady, walls enclose quietly. The castle holds its form with patience and ease, and the mind rests within that stability, expanding into the stillness. Awareness softens and spreads, becoming diffuse, weightless, untethered. Time no longer has meaning here. Moments flow into one another, unmarked, uncounted. The usual pressures of past and future dissolve, leaving only the present, a wide, unbroken expanse of calm in which sleep can arrive naturally. Even thought begins to thin. Ideas drift, lose their edges, fade into pauses. Memories lose their sharpness. Plans and concerns dissolve quietly. The castle itself becomes less a structure and more a field of steady support, a gentle container for rest. Darkness is complete, yet safe. Light, if it exists at all, has softened into muted, neutral shadows. There is no urgency, no demand, no abruptness. Everything flows evenly, predictably, and comfortably. Breaths deepen and lengthen. Muscles relax fully. Awareness merges with the calm around it. Nothing presses inward, nothing intrudes. The mind becomes part of the steady, patient presence of the castle, and in that merging, rest arrives without effort. The genius of medieval design, its walls, towers, and corridors, has become entirely invisible. Its intelligence now exists as atmosphere, as unbroken calm. Strength is no longer observed. It is felt quietly, gently. The castle holds the night, and the night holds the mind. Sleep deepens further, shapes fade, sensations dissolve. Even the concept of the castle itself softens into nothing more than support, presence, and patience. Time, form, and thought all disappear into the vast, unbroken calm. And in this infinite, quiet space, rest continues endlessly, complete, untroubled, and utterly effortless, carried by the gentle, timeless steadiness of the castle that never moves, never demands, and never ends. The calm continues, stretching outward like a tide that never ebbs. The castle has ceased to exist as a place to imagine. It has become the essence of stillness itself. Walls, towers, staircases, they no longer have form. They are a steady presence, a gentle weight that fills the mind without drawing attention. Nothing intrudes, nothing changes. Everything remains balanced, quiet, and complete. Air moves slowly, almost imperceptibly, carrying with it a faint sense of coolness and gentle circulation. Sounds exist, but they are part of the environment rather than disturbances. The subtle settling of stone, the soft brush of wind, distant rustling somewhere beyond perception, these noises do not interrupt. They merge seamlessly into the steady calm. Stone continues to support, walls continue to hold, floors continue to bear weight all without effort. The castle exists as a container of stillness, offering quiet endurance. Awareness stretches gently into this calm, diffuse, and weightless. The mind no longer seeks or resists, it drifts, fully supported. Time ceases to matter. There is no hour, no sequence, no marker. Moments blend into one another in unbroken continuity. The past and future dissolve into the present, and the present is a vast expanse of calm that holds the mind effortlessly. Even thought thins and softens. Memories fade. Ideas lose definition. Concerns and questions dissolve quietly. The castle itself fades into essence, a presence that exists without form, a quiet container for total rest. Darkness is gentle and enveloping. Light, if imagined, blends into shadow, muted and neutral. There are no contrasts, no sharpness, no surprises. Everything is even, steady, and calm. Breaths deepen, muscles release completely. Awareness merges with the surrounding stillness. There is nothing to hold on to. Presence itself is enough. The genius of medieval design, the careful placement of stone, the strategic planning of towers, walls, and staircases has become invisible. Its intelligence now exists as calm, as unbroken steadiness. The castle holds all without demanding anything in return. Sleep deepens, shapes dissolve, sensations fade. Even the memory of walls, doors, and towers softens into a field of presence. Time, form, and thought disappear into the gentle infinite calm, and so rest continues, unbroken, unhurried, complete. The castle endures silently, holding everything gently, while the mind drifts fully into deep, effortless sleep, carried endlessly by the patient, timeless steadiness of this quiet, perfect space. The calm now reaches its fullest depth. The castle, once a place of stone, timber, and human design, has become pure presence, an endless field of stillness. There is no edge, no boundary, no detail to notice. Only quiet remains, steady, patient, and complete. The mind is free to merge fully with this quiet, untroubled, and weightless, unbound by time, space, or thought. Breathing slows naturally, muscles release completely, and awareness spreads evenly into the calm around it. There is nothing to attend to, nothing to anticipate, nothing to resist. Sleep carries the mind effortlessly, layer upon layer, deeper and deeper into the quiet. Every sense softens. Every thought dissolves. Even the faintest trace of awareness drifts away, leaving only the gentle, infinite calm that the castle has always held. The genius of the medieval castle, the patience of its builders, the careful arrangement of stone, the quiet intelligence of its design has fulfilled its purpose. It was never merely a building. It was a space to endure, to support, to allow life to continue at a slow, measured pace. Now, it supports the mind itself, guiding it into rest without effort. Outside, the night passes, as it always does. The wind brushes softly, stars drift silently. The world moves in its own rhythm, distant and gentle. Inside, there is nothing but stillness, complete and unbroken. And in this final, perfect quiet, the castle and the sleeper merge into one field of calm. There is no movement, no thought, no sensation, only the endless, patient presence of steadiness. The mind has surrendered fully. The body has released fully. Sleep is complete. The castle holds. The night continues. Rest endures. And so, the story concludes not with action or words, but with quiet, timeless stillness. Everything is at peace. Everything is calm. Everything is exactly as it should be. The end.